Yasai Ninja is a game that made me completely lost for words. From the ugly visuals to the extremely repetitive soundtrack and even sound effects that don't work properly most of the times, I don't know where to begin with this. However, I am also torn. In one hand, I feel bad on bashing this small developer from my neighboring country. On the other, I really feel like people need to know about this as to hopefully stop this kind of games from reaching the consoles in the first place. On Steam, we are used to crap games that we have to filter through to get to the good indie gems, but on consoles I always expected a decent level of quality control. After all, you are buying a machine just to play games, and it's quite a bit different from the Wild West that is the PC market. For the most parts, I do think the consoles do a pretty decent job at excluding the effortless asset flips from the real games, so to speak at least, even if they aren't the greatest. But every so often we get things like Life of Black Tiger and Horse Racing 2016, which, by the way, according to the Sony website, it is still for sale for £7.99. How much money for this? Really? Speaking of which, that is also about the amount I paid for Yasai Ninja, which is still what I am going to review, even if it doesn't look like it. You see, I love horrible movies. Things like The Room or The Gay Bed and Breakfast of Terror are the only types of movies I would actually watch time and time again. So I also can find enjoyment in horrible games. I can always find something to enjoy even in an awful project, but games often require much more time and commitment than movies, so I tend to avoid the bad ones just for the fact that I'd rather sink hundreds of hours into a great game. But for about €8 I couldn't resist, and I knew it was bad, but I thought it was funny, and it was one of the cheapest physical games for the PS4 I had ever seen in my country. But what is Yasai Ninja anyway? Since future me will probably not know what background footage to add so far, then I am assuming through most of this time you have been looking at it, and I'm sure you've noticed that it doesn't look that great, but goddammit, this is getting long. So let's just jump into the game. So Yasai Ninja is about an onion samurai, Kaoru, and kung fu broccoli named Joe. And according to the company's website, it is a third-person 3D hack-and-slash game which allow you to control two characters in different moments of the story to going forward. Multiplayer game to play with friends. Depending on which character you are playing with, the game can be really different, showing parts where you only can reach with each character and his weapons. Each character will gain XP by his fight, and this will unblock different fight moves, combos, and special abilities. Now I want to point two things out. One is that they wrote the name of the game in the website and on the actual game differently. And secondly, and that despite all of this, I don't want anyone to hate on the company, as they are a very small and independent Spanish company. However, that doesn't give them the right to release terrible games like Toro on the PS4. By now, everyone has probably noticed that I'm trying to avoid speaking about the game itself, but honestly I really don't know where to start, so no more stalling. As I said before, the game is about Kaoru and Joe, an onion and a broccoli. Kaoru was a samurai that got disgraced and wants revenge on his former master, which is apparently evil, but I can't really remember if they explain you why he's supposed to be evil, and he finds Joe locked in a cage for some reason, and they both decide to join forces to get out of there and later to defeat the evil shogun guy. And this is where everything really goes wrong. So first off, you will notice the arrow buttons don't even work, and the graphics look like an old PS2 game. In fact, I believe a game like Okami, which has a cartoon aesthetic that is very similar to this, looks much better than Yasai Ninja on the PS4. As a matter of fact, this actually plays like an old crappy PS2 platformer. You know what I mean, the floaty controls, the unresponsive, terrible camera, and awful story. It has it all. As you progress, you slash your way through mostly cucumber warrior enemies, with honestly an uninteresting and slow as hell combat system. Kaoru has a sword and can block, and Joe has nunchucks and can do a roll dodge. Here's the thing though, this stupid roll never works, and doing that or nothing is pretty much the same. In fact, I could not find any way to not get hit with either of the characters. Not that it matters, since you can trade characters with a push of a button, and when one is almost dead, just trade, and once he falls, you can just get next to him and revive him. Except when it doesn't work, like when I was fighting this boss guy, and for some reason I couldn't revive my partner, and this is when I found out that after a while they just assume you both died or something and you lose. Speaking of things dying, this damn game is constantly having strokes, such as in the before mentioned boss fight, the cutscene froze and after a bit it just started working again. Don't even get me started on the frame rate though. For a game so ugly and honestly empty, I was not expecting the chugs that happened. The most noteworthy is on chapter 10, which is also the end of the game and an extremely bad and tedious last fight. So here's the thing, you confront the Shogun and realize there is no way to stop him from regaining his health, and every time he regains it, these enemies spawn. But they don't just spawn once. Oh no, that would be way too easy. You see, they just keep spawning forever, and by the third and final time, there is a tiny little army of enemies on screen, and the game becomes almost unplayable. It's incredibly frustrating. You need to fight so many guys, and as I mentioned before, you cannot avoid getting hit in combat. And it doesn't even evolve in any substantial way. From the beginning to end, the combat is pretty much the same with a few new abilities. You're supposed to get experience and level up, getting both more combos and more health, but the combos are so boring and slow, not to mention hard to pull off, that it's not even worth trying them. The only combo I found useful was the square triangle one, because it was an area of effect attack. Good luck figuring out if you actually did it though, because again, the combat is so slow and unresponsive, you will take a couple of seconds to realize it worked or not. By the end of that time, you might already be having your butt kicked. Oh, and also, I'm pretty sure you take damage while the game prepares the area of effect attack. So yeah, there's that. On top of all this, there is no indicator of experience. So if there is or not a real leveling system, we will never know. The developers say there is, but I'm not quite sure about that, since they also say that each character can make your experience really different, when in reality the only differences between both are the following: their looks, their weapons, one can dodge and one can block, an onion man can push predetermined objects, and broccoli man can pick locks. Even these things are neglectable and absolutely broken. So here's the thing though, the pushing controls are weird. I can't quite explain it, but the camera needs to be pointing where you want to push. I had never experienced this before, but let me tell you, it doesn't really work at all. The damn lockpicking is no better either. It's just a really long and slow QTE that gets longer and longer as time goes on. You won't even do it that much. You can beat this game with extremely minimal character changes, as for some reason most parts don't even use these abilities. Then, once in a while, they remember they exist and cram a bunch of it in one level. Let me explain you guys the levels also. So, this game is divided in 3 chapters, and between these chapters there are only 2 variations, platforming and the standard hack and slash. I have been mostly talking in general, leaning on the hack and slash parts, so I think it's time we discuss them in a bit more detail. You know, as much as my ramblings can be considered detailed. So let's start with the platforming sections. These are 2D instead, and deprive you of the ability to trade characters, making them instead move side by side simultaneously. You really start to feel the bad level design here. I mean, the 3D chapters are bad, but more in the sense of being bland, uninspired, and literally go to corridor left or go to corridor right. But the 2D ones have a special flair to them. Background that looks like foreground, amazing fire that is coming out of what looks like nowhere, which is also a solid wall by the way, tiny lumps that you have to jump onto right next to a cliff, and my personal favorite, the falling platforms that look exactly like the non-falling ones. Oh, and did I also mention the fact that your path sometimes gets obscured by the camera? Honestly, this video is getting a bit too big, so I'm just going to add a few more notes that I took while playing. So here he goes. You slide to your enemies, meaning you can fall in lava just because you were fighting a cucumber. The controls lock up completely or partially for no reason whatsoever. Chapter 1 ends with a leap of faith. The AI plays chase if you let them. There are invisible walls everywhere, I mean everywhere, and sometimes you can walk on them for a while. The game mocks you if you fail too many times in the 2D chapters. The cutscenes, if you can call them that, don't have voice acting or any movement other than what seems like them walking in place. Also, the writing is atrocious, on the level of this video's script to be honest. When you fight the fat main boss on chapter 5 and 6, he is so fast he doesn't have a rolling animation, making it hell as hard to dodge his roll once you trigger it. You're forced to trigger it though, because you need to hit him when he hits the wall after he gets the rolling going on, or else he is invulnerable to your fighting. Blocking swords sounds so wrong. And finally, a little fun fact. Did you know Yasai Ninja was one of the couple games to release for the Fuse Tomahawk F1, which was a cheap alternative console for China that flopped, which in turn, Soulja Boy recently tried to sell people as his own console without changing even the logo. Just thought it was funny when I searched it. Lastly, I want to quickly touch on the multiplayer option. I couldn't find anyone I hated enough to torture with this game, so I played this alone with 2 controllers, and as to expect, it didn't go well, but it was enough to give me a taste of how bad it was. The screen divides in half, and I swear the camera gets stuck in the divide. In particular, the broccoli controls especially bad for some reason. I couldn't figure out why. You would just stop and run away alone. I don't get it. Almost like it had a life of its own and was trying to leave this awful game. And I know I was playing alone, but I'm not seeing this being a viable way to beat this game. In conclusion, stay away from this game unless you're a collector, but even then, I'm not sure if it's really worth it. You know what's the worst part though? After you beat the Shogun, they have some crap talk about how next time they will kill him or something, and they essentially tell you buy the sequel. He was right there, but we have to play another game just to complete the sample of a story? Seriously? Thank you so much for watching. I know it was a long one, but I had a lot to say about this game. If you watched all the way, I'm assuming you enjoyed it, so make sure to like and subscribe for more. That's it till next time. See ya.
しかし、その話は次回に持ち越される。